bet you that's better. It's always better to have a mic off than a mic on by mistake. That's just, we've learned that over the years. Anyway, this is a combination regular meeting for just a couple procedures for approval of minutes and that, but the main body of this is for the work session. So if you'd all stand and you want to get a roll call first? You want to do that first? All right, let's do
Yep,
that.
we can do roll call. We'll begin with Jeff Watson.
Here.
Lee Brown.
Here.
Ellen Cara. Here. Ken Hartsfield.
Here.
Vicki Good. Here. Jerry Penland.
Here.
Peter Scanlon.
Here.
John DeVoe.
Here.
And for the record, Charles Schrader is away today.
If you join us for the pledge. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need approval of the minutes of April 26th. Corrections, modifications, anything? Nothing? Nothing. Motion.
Move to accept the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't catch the seconder.
Excuse me.
Who was the seconder?
I was. I'm sorry.
You
Oh,
moved.
no, I moved.
And Jeff seconded. Thank you.
I don't even know what I did. Bad start.
We don't have any public hearings. Before Laura starts this work session, this is a work session. We will decide nothing tonight. There's no applicants. There's nothing presented for that piece of property. This is simply going over the zoning change that you guys talked about when we were here before. Okay. We'll look at input from you. The planning department will look at input from us, and they will take that information and look at this again, and this will come back into a regular meeting. Do we have a date yet? No date certain yet. But that's the whole idea of this, is fact gathering for them. So anyway, if people want to get up and talk about that, we'll let you guys go first after we get through the presentation, and then we'll interject. But just remember, we're not going to pass anything tonight. We're not going to talk about an existing business that's coming to town. We'll have time to do that another opportunity. But that's what we want to get. We want to get input and ideas. Okay? Laura Pellegrino, it's yours.
Thank you, Chairman DeVoe. So as John said, this is just a work session. So what I hope to get out of tonight's session is direction from the commissioners with respect to the ordinance that was presented at the last meeting. Now, the ordinance was an ordinance to amend the zoning code. It's a text amendment that we were proposing. And in essence, the essence of that text amendment was to change the matrix of the zoning code. And the matrix is the land use matrix, which is essentially 10 pages, a huge list of different types of uses, which is a pretty standard item in most zoning codes. And we were dealing specifically with RV storage and rental uses in the city of Woodland Park. It's a very narrowly focused text amendment. So keep in mind that we're just dealing with storage and rental of RVs and other automotive type vehicles. So with that, what I'd like to begin this work session with is a presentation by a real estate investor, Miss Linda Murray, who is here tonight. And what happened with Linda is that after she read the article, so someone actually did read the article in the Courier, she approached and sent an email to me and said, hey, I've actually submitted applications and come before the city, not in front of the commission or the council, but come in front of staff and had proposals for RV storage and rental. And so she offered, because this is the business she's in, to come before this commission and present an informational and educational presentation on her business and the business of RV storage and rental. She does not have an application. and is not proposing an application at any time during this presentation or even in the near future. She has developed 2 RV storage facilities, one in Las Vegas, one in the east end of the city of Colorado Springs, and she'll go into that in her presentation tonight. I accepted her offer to come before this commission and the members of the public that are here because she's very knowledgeable and informative, and because there were questions at the last Planning Commission public hearing about who was making inquiries about RV storage and what kind of inquiries were. This is an example of a member, a developer, a real estate investor who had made inquiries in the past about this type of use that we're discussing tonight. So this is an example that supports the reason why the city is moving forward with the text amendment to address a gap and a need for this use. So, without any further ado, I'd like to have Linda Murray come up to the podium, and she will do a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll begin delving into the actual letters of the code.
Hi, good evening. Good evening. I am getting over a cold, so I do apologize if my voice is a little raspy tonight. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. So let me pull this up.
It's the,
Let's see, how do I make
it's
it?
the little,
Just a minute.
yeah, let me,
I'm a Mac snob.
we'll go back.
Previous, there we go. Keep going. There we go.
Can everybody see it okay?
Can everyone see
The
it?
lights don't bother you? We don't need to dim down? You can see the screen good? Good.
Well, as Laura mentioned, I've lived in Woodland Park for the past 20 years, and I saw the article in the Courier, and I said, hey, you know, I didn't know if you guys knew, but I'm doing exactly that. I didn't know you guys were even talking about RV storage, and I said, you know, I'm more than willing to come in and answer any questions you have. So Laura and Sally took me up on that, and they said, hey, would you mind putting together a 10, 15-minute presentation just to give you an idea about RV storage. So that's why I'm here. So now, how do I forward that?
Just click on, yeah.
Okay. As she mentioned, I'm not here to do anything but other than give information. I don't have any projects up here at the point. I don't have anything involved throughout the. She did mention I did come up a few years ago. I was working with a developer, and he had asked me. He had some property up here, and he asked me to try to figure out and help him with highest and best use. And we toyed around with the idea of self-storage, and it was just a little. It never came to fruition, and you know, not that one specifically, but in general, I will tell you, sometimes it's hard because you have to come up and you're not guaranteed it's going to happen, but you have to put a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money into a presentation, and sometimes you say, is it worth it to do that? So, you know, that was one of those things where we did explore it up here. We didn't see that there were a lot of choices that you could even do it up here, so, you know, it just never came to pass at that point. What I wanted to talk about is a little bit about our company, Maximum Storage, the need for RV storage, the market, design factors, mitigating factors, and why this can benefit a community, and then answer questions from yourselves and the audience if they have any questions. Now, just a little bit about Maximum Storage. I have 3 other partners, and what we do is we invest in self-storage facilities, and we help others do the same as well. And we own, operate, and have developed over 800 units in RV and boat storage and self-storage. Little about us extended. We have a facility in Las Vegas. This is a picture of the facility. It's 8 acres. It's 540 units, specifically RV boat, and it's near Lake Mead in Las Vegas, about 10 miles outside of Lake Mead. This one is open parking and also canopy. We don't have any enclosed there, so it's basically open storage for RV boat. then we are developing, this is a picture of the site we're developing in Colorado Springs. It's going to be 100,000 square foot, 10 buildings. It's going to be a combination of RV boat, fully enclosed, and it's also going to be just traditional self-storage. We're actually slated to open. We were going to be open in 2 weeks, but the high winds pushed it back about 2 weeks. So we're looking at opening in the middle of June. And so I am actively involved, as you can see, in self-storage and RV storage specifically. So I was just hoping I can be a source for you tonight if you have any questions. The reason for RVs, people love to travel. I mean, you explore the country. You want quality time. This gives you a way to interact with your family closely. You can bring your pets. And a lot of people just are saying, you know, I really like to have my own dishes. I like to have my own stuff in the bathroom. I don't like to have to pack it every 2 days from a hotel. So it's just a way that people like to get around. But the downside is the vehicles are very large. So that's one of the issues that I think a lot of cities come up to. That's a lot of issues a lot of neighbors come up to. You know, people really love their RV, but they don't necessarily want to look at their neighbor's RV for the next 6 months situation. The nice thing with an RV is people want to be close to their place to pack it. It's just a lot of hassles if you have to go. In this situation, I don't know what the closest one is, maybe about 6 or 8 miles down the road. If you want enclosed, you're probably going to have to go into Colorado Springs, and actually the one we're building is one of the few ones that is enclosed, which from here is about 45 minutes away. So if you're trying to pack all your dishes, trying to pack all your valuables that you want for your trip, you take it down 45 minutes to put it into your RV, and then you realize that you forgot half of your stuff. And so then you have another 45 minutes 90-minute round trip just to pack. So people do like it to be close. I mean, that is something that is valuable for an RV. But the problem is, too, you might want it close, but you just physically can't park it at your house. Some people do have the luxury, especially up here, because there are a lot of lots with large sizes that you can park an RV. But ours, I live in Woodland West, and we have specifics about exactly what we can park, how long you can park it, how big it can be. Some don't even have that as a luxury. Like the picture in the front, you may just not have a lot that you can physically put your RV on. So you need some place to park it. And a lot of people want to protect property values. You know, this is an issue. People would love to park it there, but there's already rules in place, so they have to put it somewhere. And that's where RV storage facilities come into play. Now, RVs come in all different shapes and sizes, as we know, but the bottom line is they have to be parked somewhere. Now, just to give you an idea of RV designs, there's 3 or 4 different categories that you have with RV design. First is uncovered parking, which is basically just parking outside and the parking right next to each other. The next is covered parking. And with covered parking, usually they're called canopies, and you have open canopy, which is the picture on the top. The open canopy is basically just a carport, a giant carport with multiple slots. And you'll see the partially enclosed canopy in the bottom picture. And what that is you might have the sides covered and the back covered possibly, but not the front covered. So those are canopy parking. The next is fully enclosed, and that's what we're building in Colorado Springs. And with fully enclosed, that just covers it. You can lock it. You can leave your vehicle. You don't have to worry. And then you have indoor enclosed. And so indoor enclosed is usually you have someone who you won't actually drive your RV. The person who works at the RV facility will park it for you. They can park quite a few next to each other, and then you have to make arrangements to move vehicles to get your vehicle out when you're ready to go. And but it gives quite a bit of protection if it's indoors as well. So with the designs, some of the pluses and the minuses of the designs, from a developer standpoint, uncovered parking, you can bring that to the market rather quickly. You might just have to just put up a fence and you're good. And you might not need to do as much in your development costs because you don't have as much expense with the building and the construction. So the reason that you can do that smaller, you can actually do those developments smaller just because you don't have to have as much of a profit margin to make the numbers work. So with uncovered parking, you can actually have a smaller facility and it will work fine. Covered parking, open canopy and partially enclosed, they give partial protection from the elements. The downside is hail. We have a lot of hail, and that's why people want protection. So the downside is, though, if the hail's coming from an angle, you're not going to get as much protection. Or the sun, what we notice in Las Vegas with ours is as the sun moves, there's maybe a situation of 5 to 6 hours per day when it's very covered, but then as the sun moves, you still have the sun coming in. So partial does give you some protection. It's just not the best solution for, if you have a very expensive RV, you probably want to go to the next, which is fully enclosed. And fully enclosed gives you the option of protecting it. You know, say like in this situation, you have a boat and you want to protect the cover for the boat. You want to protect the seat covers. The fully enclosed gives you much more protection. You can also lock fully enclosed, so you can store your jackets for your ski jackets, things like that. You can park them there too. And then moving on to the design and the mitigating factors. Facilities today are designed to be much more pleasing to the eye. I know in the past a lot of people, what you think of is the traditional, and that still does happen, traditional metal storage all in a row. They're getting to a point where they're getting a lot more sophisticated with storage now, and there's a lot of things you can do to make them prettier and give them a sense that they feel like they're part of the community. They're not just a big old metal building that was slapped into the middle of the road. So you can play with that. Like this one is a concept design, but you can see in the back it's got kind of a curved fence. The office is very interesting, very appealing, and even the front landscaping is just very comfortable to look at and very enjoyable. A lot of storage facilities will also do additional marketing. They might even have conference rooms, so if you want to come in and have some business meetings, you can do it at the storage facility. So there's a lot of multi-use happening in the storage fields nowadays too. Typical sizes. What we have at our facility, these are some of the sizes. 14 foot by 40 foot, 12 foot by 40 foot, 12 foot by 30 foot, 10 foot by 30 foot, 10 foot by 20 foot, and 10 foot by 10 foot. The ones on the right are traditional self-storage sizes. The ones on the left are more for vehicles. So with a vehicle, for example, a 14 by 40 is a 560 square foot space. It's just much larger. So you do have to understand that when they're being built, that they need a large footprint. And as I mentioned, they are large. Turning ratio that is preferred for an RV storage facility is 50 to 60 feet for the aisle. Now, you can get away with less if you do angled parking, but traditionally you don't want to go really below 45 foot for the aisle. Because of that, and what you need is land. For self-storage, you can get away with about 3 acres. You can also get away with less for self-storage, and there's always options to the rules. However, for traditional self-storage, you usually want about 3 acres. If you're looking at RV and boat storage specifically, to make the numbers work, you usually need 5 acres minimum, and 8 acres is preferred. So you're looking at larger tracts of land. Now keep in mind too that there's always, you want open space, you want things to be pretty, you want landscaping, but you do have to factor in that to make the numbers work, we can't have 40% of it being land. You do have to have room for the buildings to be there. But they're getting to a point where they can design them to look really very nice. So that's an option too. RV storage does provide a service for the community, because there's numerous times you saw the RV in one of those where they're just angry at everybody and spray painting the RV. This gives an option where you can say, I understand you want to park it at your house, but we do have an option for you down the road, and it's only a few miles away. That's what RV storage is for. And the options, it gives you options for compliance, and it gives happy neighbors. And what I think we all want is to protect our property values. So this gives a situation where you can bring your vehicles and put them in a place that's safe, secure. Cameras are looking at it all the time. You can look at it on your phone to check on your RV. So that's what RV storage is for. And so just in a final thought, an RV's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But do you want options for where they park? Because what's beautiful for you may not be beautiful for your neighbor. So anyway, in a nutshell, that's kind of a big, broad overview of RV, but I'm more than willing to answer questions. Yes?
Well, first of all, thank you for coming in and for spending your time.
No problem.
Really appreciate it. It was really informative. And on the way you configure sizes, how do you make that judgment? Let's say you had a lot of latitude within the code for the type of building you could put up. But let's just talk about covered for a minute.
Okay.
How do you make the determination on the number of different size units you're going to offer?
Well, what we do and what we traditionally suggest is a feasibility study. This is something, if you're building an office building and an accountant is renting the office space and the accountant's business does not work, you can move a lawyer into that space. If you build an RV facility, you have to make sure that it works up front, or you can't exactly move a lawyer into the RV space. So
A tall lawyer.
yeah. So you have to be very due diligent with your exploring what your costs are going to be, what your market is going to be, and how well they're going to do. Different markets require different sizes. For example, if you're in New York City, they usually use a 5-foot by a 5-foot space, and they rent those out all day long. In some place like Woodland Park, like for example, we have an acre and a half that we live on. I can store a lot of stuff and still be good, and it doesn't look junky. So I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to want a larger space because I'm going to have larger toys that I want to store. So in a rural community, typically the storage facility sizes are larger, 10 by 20s, 10 by 30s. And if you're looking at vehicles, because you've got mirrors, and on the larger, the Class A is the really nice RV. It could be $100,000, $200,000 RV. A Class A is about 10 foot, but then the mirrors come out. So with ours, we've designed that we have 14-foot doors, and so our storage is 14-foot doors. It's 20-foot high, 40-foot long to fit the RV. Most RVs, there are RVs that are larger than 40-foot. The majority of RVs for the general public are usually 38-foot and below. So typically what we did for our facility is we brought in an expert on RVs and storage, and she helped us decide, okay, this is how many of this size you need, this is how many of this size, and we went with her recommendations because that's what she does for a living.
Okay, and but your development in Colorado Springs right now, that is a mix of RV, boat storage, and self-storage.
Yes.
So the excess stuff we have. So that neither of your developments are strictly RV boat storage.
The one in Las Vegas is strictly RV boat.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes. And
that's uncovered.
That's uncovered and canopy.
And canopy.
Yeah, and that one specifically is 540 spaces.
Okay.
So, and we park anything from, we actually have Girl Scout canoes all the way up to double-decker buses that they use and go up and down the Strip in Las Vegas. We park everything from the canoes to the double-decker buses there. Yeah.
And then I'll shut up. I'll let the other commissioners speak. But could it be economically viable to to have a indoor storage RV boat storage facility without the self-storage component?
Yes. Now, it can be economically viable, but for example, we did both in Colorado Springs because an RV is just physically a large footprint. And so to make the numbers work, you have to have enough spaces to make the math work.
Got it.
So and that's what we, plus where our facility is right on Highway 24, just about a mile east of Powers.
Oh.
And in that area, they have a lot of new subdivision area.
Yeah, that'll be great.
So for our feasibility study, they felt that it made more sense for us to do both. But that's why I also say typically you're looking at 5 acres, but maybe 8 acres. Because to make the numbers work, traditionally it takes about that much space to have enough parking to do just RV.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions from the audience?
Okay.
Come on.
So you talked about a feasibility study, and that sounds very economical driven. And I guess I have some questions about what types of things do you do when you look at the community and say, I want to put a particular storage unit on. Sorry, I guess you guys want me to talk into this. Anyhow, I guess the question I have is, do you do any type of impact study to the area in which you intend to put in a storage unit such as this? Because I can tell you, I've been up here 20 years, and I could bet my paycheck that on Friday nights, you're going to have all kinds of activity there. And I can bet on Sunday after 11 o'clock, when everybody has to get out of their campsites, you're going to have a whole crap load of activity there on a Sunday afternoon. I walk those trails all the time overlooking Highway 24, and I can watch how this traffic pattern, and it's already begun, and you could see it this past Sunday, all the RVs heading back down to Colorado Springs. So my question is, what type of feasibility study do you do as to the impact to the community? I mean, you can think about, okay, if you put this over there by Safeway on a Friday evening and you've got all these people trying to come out onto Highway 24 from that storage unit, what does that do to the traffic patterns in that area?
Yeah.
If I want to go to the grocery store and I'm coming out of the grocery store, I can't get across Highway 24 because there's a half a dozen of those big things all lined up. So what type of feasibility study do you do as to the impact of the community?
One of the
as to where you
things,
put
let
that?
me interrupt you just for a second. We have no applicant. You're asking questions on
I'm
something.
asking her.
I know what you're doing.
specifically that.
If that-
She's
yeah.
just providing this, and then we still have to get in all of this later.
Sure.
yet, Okay.
Yeah.
But again,
Well-
if she has experience on feasibility study, I would love to understand what
Sure.
type is done there beyond, is this economically feasible and will I make money?
Yeah, and traditionally, where ours is in Colorado Springs, that was not an issue because it's in a very industrial area. But I understand your question from coming up here. In the past, what's happened is working very closely with city planners, and usually what they ask for is a traffic study, and they ask for studies along those lines so that you can mitigate those situations and understand them. Now, the interesting thing, which has been fascinating for me, is I've learned about this, because that was one of the issues I was concerned about was, do you have people coming in? Are they going to be in at midnight? Number one, we limit our hours for gate access so that you cannot get in all hours of the night. If you're coming in at midnight, why? You don't usually have a reason for that. Now, you can always have somebody call ahead and say, hey, we got out late, we're going to be in at midnight, could you set the lock so we can get in, that late? Typically, we have our hours from 6 a.m. for contractors who come in. A lot of people will park their work vehicle with us because they can't park their work vehicle at home, so they will come in 6 to 7 a.m. access is where we are, and then we usually close at about 9 p.m. for that. The other fascinating thing is the majority of people who have an RV are well, not the majority, but quite a big majority are retired. And a lot of, for example, in Vegas, they will get their RV out and travel for 3 months. So we haven't seen that. Well, I expected that, especially around Lake Mead, where as they're getting done with their boat, they'd be back. We just haven't seen that. But usually what does happen is you work with the city planners and you figure out how much traffic is this, how much of an impact is it going to have, and then figure out if that's going to work or not. Yeah, does that answer your question? Okay.
Can you pass the mic to the next person you choose with their hand up?
He wasn't next.
What is
You're not going to control this.
What is the price range the price range for your typical customers from the self-storage to the largest RVs?
Oh, okay. Well, it's a big range, and it depends if it's covered or if it's uncovered. For example, if you're just parking kind of a traditional RV in uncovered, you're looking at somewhere between $45 and $60 for the month. If you want to go the full-blown, where it's, the largest enclosed we have, you're looking at somewhere between $275 and $400. So,
Largest enclosed?
yes, but a lot of people we have some RVs in Las Vegas where they've spent $500,000 or $600,000 on their RV, and so they want to protect it, and so we offer both options for people. If you just want to get it out of your driveway, you can do it for anywhere from $45 to $60 is usually what it is. Mm-hmm.
Can you pass the mic on to the... Thank you. We'll just go around that.
We're going to get you in the back eventually. It's going that way. Okay.
Could you say your names and your address, please?
I'll do that.
Thank you.
My name is Arnie Sparnitz. My address is 2621 Mystic Court. Robert Conroy's matter here. The question I have is, you said that to make it work, you can't have 40% of the development being land. And so does that apply to a enclosed building type of self-storage?
More so it does. Just because like I say, one garage for an RV is 14 foot by 40 foot by 20 foot. And you see what's been happening in the news lately. I think they're talking about a 25% increase in steel prices. So it just, the numbers start to now. But I don't want to say that's always true. Sometimes it's varying factors on how much you got the land for, where it's at, what you're going to build. You might not build that many. Maybe you just have a few so that you have that option available. But the majority is open space. So there's ways around that. But it just, if you're doing like we're doing in Colorado Springs, which is basically all enclosed, it was a much higher price tag, and it did require a larger chunk of land to do that.
And also to the point of economic viability, do you have good sources in terms of where you look at in terms of what's the economic value added for that land use? So by saying a development of 8 acres contributes this to the community, typically in tax revenue and other types of benefits?
Yeah, we're too new to actually have those statistics yet, but that's exactly, we are looking into that as we come into play and how much it has brought in. I know just in the construction, we had over 200 people who were on the construction site, and so that added the viability. It's a temporary basis, but we do have ongoing employment. We have, it helps with the surrounding community. So we are going to, I don't have any statistics on ours that I can share, but we are looking at that as our next step. Yeah.
I guess I'm next. I'm Tricia Stinner. I live at 1140 Michael Lane in Woodland Park. The reason we're meeting tonight is we're trying to redefine definitions on trailers, RVs, etc. What definition do you use for your RVs when you use screening for allowing people to come in and park within your facility? What is your definition of an RV?
Well, for us, we have, like I say, we have Girl Scout canoes, and we have $600,000 RVs. We haven't come up with specific. What we have come up with ours is a specific on that they're decently maintained. For example, once they get about 20 years old, we have more strict guidelines on what we will accept, because we want people who are in our facilities to be proud of being next to the people parked next to them. So we don't have a specific definition, but we do have, if your RV is spray painted all over it, the tires are worn out, the windows are cracked, we may say thank you, but we're just not going to accept your RV.
Have you had any problem at all with tiny homes coming and requesting space?
No, because it's a misnomer. People worry about self-storage for people living there. Self-storage traditionally does not design it with electricity readily available, and they also do not design it with water readily available. So we do offer a trickle charge if your RV has been parked for 9 months, because that's how a lot of them, you were talking about, a lot of them just don't come in and out a lot. They will park for 9 months, and then they'll travel for 3 or 4 months. And so you might need a trickle charge to get your RV started after it's sat for 9 months, but we have not had that as much of an issue.
And do you have a capacity for a pump station? I'm assuming you have pump-out service available. And could you describe that for us, please?
Yeah, ours actually, we opted not to have pump out because we found there's a lot of RV, like Camping World is near us. There are a lot of actual RV mechanics that have dumping stations, so we just opted not to go that route. It's a helpful thing. It's nice, but it's not necessarily critical in an RV storage facility.
So that you don't feel that's damaged you whatsoever because you have availability. What if in Woodland Park we have limited availability of pump-out services?
Yeah, so it might be something that you would look at up here. That would be part of the feasibility. For our feasibility, she did not see it as a necessity. We may offer natural gas or propane, so that if you're traveling and you want to fill up your propane tank, you can. But we just decided it was going to be more hassle than it was worth. And so, but you could offer it. And for the ones that I've talked to, the RV sites that do have it, it's really not. It's not hard. It's not. It's never been an issue. It's never been a big impact around on the facilities around there. It seems to work just fine.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Mike Nakai, 225 Morningstar Court. So you said your facility is in Colorado Springs on 24 east of Powers. Is that north of the highway?
Yeah, it's... No, I'm sorry, south.
South of 24?
Do you know Whistling Pines Gun Club?
Okay.
It's
so
right...
is it in the city limits of Colorado Springs?
It's in Cimarron Hills. But so we have...
It's county.
Yeah, it is county. It's part of it's part of an industrial development.
But you're not being restricted by Colorado Springs zoning and municipal code.
Well, we did have some. I mean, there's some codes that transfer over from, because we did work with regional building and in Colorado Springs, and we also worked with the water in Cimarron Hills. So it was kind of a combination of both. Yes. But the zoning, I think the zoning did come through Colorado Springs, and we were zoned storage already. So.
Well, I mean, if you're either in the city or you're not in the city, and the zoning is probably either governed by the city or the county.
Cimarron Hills is in the city.
It is in the city?
It's maintained by CSPD.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that I'll have to double check on that, but we worked with a construction company, and they did all of the zoning for us. And
I just figured since it was it's imminent construction, I thought this would be fresh on your mind. How about Las Vegas? Is that in the city limits?
Yes, Las Vegas is.
It's not in Sunrise Manor?
Sunrise Manor is, but it is part of the same thing. Now that one we did not build. That one was pre-existing.
Pre-existing, you purchased it, but you're saying it's in the city limits. Sunrise Manor is in the city limits of Las Vegas.
Yeah, because it's a Las Vegas address. Yes.
No, it's in the county. It's Sunrise Manor is a township. It's unincorporated Clark County. The zoning is not governed by the city limits at all.
Right.
It's not governed by municipal code of the city of Las Vegas.
She's not the applicant.
Right.
Okay. And then I want to go touch a little bit on Patricia's point. So in either of your facilities, you talked about managing the type of vehicles that come in there. Mm-hmm. Is all of that restriction upon you, or is there anything about what goes into your storage facility? What type of vehicles, what type of trailers, what type of anything is stored there? Does any of that come through code to you?
Yeah, the code for Las Vegas is more on recreational vehicles. They don't want the hot dog salesman truck. So some of the heavy commercial, some of the heavy manufacturing, like if you wanted a Bobcat, those type of situations, they frown on that. Colorado Springs, where we're at, is already a very industrial area, so that is okay in that situation.
Okay, that's the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody up here have any questions?
I have a question. Does your facility include a RV washing type wash?
That was another one we looked at, and we opted to say no to that. It seemed like it's a nice convenience, but it wasn't a necessity, and we found there's a lot of mobile power washers that will come in, and that's what we do have in Las Vegas. We have a gentleman who has a tank on the back of his truck. He's got a generator, and then he comes in for 2 or 3 hours every few days, and then he offers that service as a car wash. So that seemed to work just as well for us, and so we just opted not to do that as well.
Did you have to have special drainage for that? Or?
No, there's so little water that he's using with his. It's very, very minimum, and it's an asphalted situation, so it seems to work fine. Yeah.
Do you do environmental impact studies for those things? Like
Yes, you do. Yeah, and we had to do a very small environmental in the Colorado Springs, but they weren't requesting a lot for that one.
Sure.
Yeah, you've already answered this several different ways, but if you took a bird's eye view of your facility in Colorado Springs and backed away, what would you see around it?
You mean like the landscaping, or what?
No, around the facility, what would you see?
Oh, okay. Ours is in an area. Oh, excuse me. The area that we're in is an area that's really starting to move east. And so right now what we look up and see is on 1/4 of it, you would see, for example, there's a gun club. There's a lot of, there's actually a Mercedes RV mechanic. There's a lot of those type of industrial type situations. Then as you look around it right now it's fields. However, right on the other side of us is another storage facility, and right next to them they're building, I think, 500 houses. And we're really close to Mark Shuffle, where they just put in a King Soopers. So if you did a bird's eye view right now, you'd see a lot of fields, and you'd see some industrial businesses, and you would see houses starting to come up. And I think if you did a bird's eye view in another 4 or 5 years, it will probably be 3/4 houses surrounding it. Yeah, and where we're at, we seem to blend in very well. I mean, it is an industrial area, but they've been very careful about the design as well, so that as the houses come into play, it'll be a cohesive community.
Thank you. Because we need to get on, because we're taking all floors.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
But thank you very much for doing it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank Linda Murray for coming tonight, and she will stay for the rest of tonight's discussion. If there are any additional questions, she'll be available. And do appreciate you coming. Very informative, really. So I, too, have a brief PowerPoint presentation. It's not nearly as fancy as Linda's. And then I'm going to start with the same slide that we started with last time, which is a little bit overwhelming, but this is what we're here tonight to discuss. Specifically, outdoor storage of RVs and the rental of RVs. So we could be talking about a facility like this, or we could be talking about a facility with canopies, as Linda mentioned, or we could be talking about boat rental and storage as well. And that's what we are talking about. So I wanted to present that, and again, tonight is just a work session for this Planning Commission. This is what you had directed based on the last discussion. And so tonight, we're not expecting any decisions to be made, but I would greatly appreciate direction. And we're going to start from where we left off last time, which is the draft ordinance, the text amendment that was presented at the public hearing. And from there, we will discuss all of the issues that came up last time and any new issues that come up this time, and see how we can change the ordinance and the language of the ordinance to something that might be more amenable to all, both the Planning Commission and the public. So again, the proposed code amendment is specific and deals with the storage and rental of cars, trailers, recreational vehicles, light trucks, motorcycles, off-highway or all-terrain vehicles, snowmobiles, and boats. Essentially, all types of recreation vehicles, boats included, all of those types of uses. And we're only dealing with all of these types, all of these vehicles, because that's the category we're in our land use matrix. So for instance, a couple of rows above this, if you recall the last time we talked about the matrix, there was a row that dealt with the sale of rental cars or trailers or recreation vehicles, yada, yada, yada. So we're dealing with storage of these types of vehicles.
Laura, can I ask just to point out, just to follow what the scope here is looking at the use table in section F, you note that the sale is covered in F2. I think the last time this came up, Sally mentioned that there's provided for as truck or trailer rental and as an ancillary use at a service station. In between those, there's 5 is automobile rental and 6 is truck and trailer rental. Somewhere between automobiles, trucks, and trailers, it would seem to me we've covered rental of all sorts of RVs, campers, if it's trailers, that we already have provision, broad provision for, and these weren't recommended to be touched.
Right.
So we're adding an overlay where we've already made provisions for automobile and truck and trailer rentals. So
right.
Help me understand what's the new about the rental we're doing here now.
Well, what we're going to do is if we are going to go in a direction to allow for RV storage, it's also a good ancillary use to have rental in that type of a facility as well. So we would allow for that option and that flexibility in this new use that we're adding into the table.
Seems to me you have, a rental facility and a storage facility are conceptually 2 different kinds of construction and buildings and business purposes and that sort of thing. Here you kind of lump them together, and if you're talking about, what you pictured, storage of RVs, then I think we need to be more specific, be that specific about what we're doing.
Okay, that's a great point.
And exclude, motorcycles and all that kind of crap. Just put, I'm just trying to motor vehicles. I'm trying to envision what kind of facility. And if you
I bet you have a motorcycle.
So that's kind of a hodgepodge up there. And if we're talking about a storage facility for RVs, then I think we need to be that specific about what
and
we've
we
got.
And we can focus it and narrow it down. My approach when I wrote this first draft was they seem to be similar uses and similar impacts that we could address with it. But maybe you're right. Maybe we should just
Well, if you're coming from the other end about what the facility looks like and how it's structured to do the business that it's intended to do, they're totally 2 different things.
Well,
as far as I'm concerned. If you have a rental facility of cars, snowmobiles, or whatever you've got, then I think that's a different looking facility.
Can I address?
Look at the budget rental kinds of facilities, that kind of stuff. That's not RV.
I can address that a little bit. I didn't mention we have a U-Haul rental in Las Vegas. Now, traditionally, a self-storage is not going. I'm not sure what your definition of rental would be. If you were talking about just having a lot of four-wheel, 4x4s or something like that you're going to rent, that would be a totally different business model. What happens in an RV storage, because they go very well hand in hand and they don't have much of a difference in construction, is something like U-Haul, where you already have the parking space. It might be empty because that person is out for 9 months, and so you'll park the U-Haul there until it's rented. And even in Las Vegas, we only have 2 or 3 vehicles on the lot at any time. The other business model we looked at that was rental was something like RV rentals, like they have one down in Colorado Springs, RV America. It's the same kind of situation. You might have the RV parked in one of your spaces that you already have. You just don't have it rented right now. And then somebody will come in, rent that RV, and take it out and camp for 2 weeks and then come back. So I don't know what the overall definition of rental you're talking about, but if you're in an RV storage facility, those are probably the only 2 you would ever even look at in that kind of scenario, if that helps.
Okay. So again, when I drafted this first attempt, the uses were similar enough for me to just lump them all together. But if we do want to wean out certain types of uses, like rental of automobiles or rental of snowmobiles or whatever, we can certainly do that. So what I'd like to do is let me just continue on with my presentation, and then we're going to go into each row, and I'll get the feedback at that point. So let's go back to, okay. So again, the reason staff was doing this whole text amendment was to respond to a perceived community need. It does fill a gap that currently does not exist in our use matrix and in our zoning code right now. And we are looking at still implementing an administrative site plan review process as it's currently written. So there is an opportunity for an impact assessment, and then we are limiting, this is the original draft, to locate this type of use in the service commercial and the heavy service commercial light industrial zone district. So again, we were only looking at 2 zone districts where this use would be allowed, and within those 2 zone districts in the city of Woodland Park, we're looking at 20 pieces of land, 20 parcels, 20 lots, of which maybe 1 or 2 of them, maybe 3, might be 3 acres or 5 acres in size. Limited options for this type of use. At any rate, so one of the questions that was asked previously was what happens next? So again, tonight is just to get your direction. If we do get a consensus on a direction with this text amendment, then what could happen is that staff will revise the draft ordinance that was submitted to you. Give us some time, so probably in mid-June we would have another public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, so it would come back revised as a public hearing document. And then it would go forward to council. So council is the final decision-making authority for a zoning text amendment. So that's nothing written in stone. This is just what could happen if we come to a consensus tonight. So this is the draft that was presented at the last meeting. And what I'd like to do is start with the essence of this text amendment. And that is the addition of F11. That is this last row right here. Now what was presented at the last meeting was that we add this entire row into the matrix, and this entire row is storage or rental of automobiles, trailers, recreational vehicles, light trucks, motorcycles, off-highway or all-terrain vehicles, snowmobiles, and boats, provided that all outside storage uses be screened from public view by an approved fence or other approved buffering, and B, outside usage shall exclude the storage or rental of damaged or junk goods of any kind. So this is all new language that's proposed. And then this use, the storage or rental of these items, was proposed as a permitted use in the service commercial zone, was proposed as a permitted use in the heavy service light industrial zone, and is a permitted conditional use in the PUD zone, which is specifically written for the uses that are proposed. So, based on discussion at the last meeting, I think the first thing that would change might be, based on any comments you guys present, changing it from a permitted use in these zones to a conditional use. So that would change it so that now these types of uses would have to come in front of the Planning Commission for a public hearing. That was one of the contentious items that was discussed at the last meeting, and staff does not object to making that change if that's the direction this commission wants to go with. The other changes that we would propose to this row is exactly what we just talked about. Perhaps we should take out the rental aspect of this. Maybe it's not a good ancillary or accessory use to a storage facility. Perhaps we should just deal with storage, and that would be fine. Staff would be willing to take that out. I think you want to take a look at what it is. Do we want to allow for storage of automobiles or light trucks, or are we looking at simply just recreational vehicles and boats, or not even boats? You know, you tell me what direction you want to go, and then tell me what direction you want to go with respect to screening. I've used language that we've already got in the matrix. It's pretty minimal. If you want these to be fully enclosed, we can make that as a condition here. If you think a canopy is enough screening, we can make that as a condition. If you want heavier landscaping, we can make that as a condition too. This is the type of language that we require for screening for other heavy impacted uses. So I just use that same language. And before I finish, and then the last one, all outside uses shall exclude junk goods. And that is just to avoid this type of a use from becoming a junkyard or a scrap yard or the storage of junk. And that was the reason that was put in there. And again, that language was taken from other uses in the matrix. So I'm not making this stuff up. In a way I am, but it is using language that we're familiar with.
Input?
So,
Questions for her? That's what she wants.
I've got a question concerning, basically, you're saying you're responding to a community's need or service to the community. In a small town of just over 8,000 people, what percentage of our population has an RV or a fifth wheel? I mean, how many are registered? Maybe 50? 40? 100? 10,000? I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, and
so how are we determining that is a need? How many people came and said we need this in order to change all the? Why introduce this ordinance? I don't understand why it's even brought up, because as you can see, there's a lot of people that don't feel we should be changing it at this time.
So it's being introduced because the planning department continues to get numerous telephone calls from property owners, from residents, from developers about this use. And to them, we simply say there is no place to park and store your RV in the city. So
and
they have to go outside.
How many calls have you received on that? Documented phone calls.
We do a record request. We actually did a record request for a gentleman that's in the audience, and just on RVs alone, I mean, in the last year, we probably had at least 6 calls on personal RVs, 6 telephone calls.
6. So out of 6 calls, we're sitting here.
That's just regarding a personal RV. We've had inquiries from developers who would like to, or are searching for land, as Ms. Murray was searching for land for a development of this type. So we get inquiries, and we get developers.
Not to justify having all this time spent on this, thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money researching this, going through it. I mean, you guys aren't free, neither is the other staff, and if you only had 6 calls, to me it's not really that much of an issue. And I don't understand. I just don't understand.
I've got basically the same question from a standpoint of exactly why are we trying to make this change? Does the staff really think that people that have RVs on their lots right now, they're not parked on the street, they're parked on their lots, are actually going to pay the money to move them into a storage facility in Woodland Park?
Yes.
We would like to provide the option.
I already do.
You think it would?
Well, it depends whether it's $400 or $40.
Well, yeah. But I'm not so sure that that's going to happen unless there's a comparable ordinance forcing it to happen, which I don't think would pass in Woodland Park. But I think that's the only way you're going to get them off the lots, if that's the thing. If the idea is to move the RVs out of sight and into a storage facility, then I don't think that's going to happen.
How many neighborhoods do we have that have, homeowner codes that says you cannot park your RV on your property?
We have one that's not enforced, and it's not enforced because people are not going to go along with it, and if you try to enforce it, you're probably going to lose.
This is a work session.
I know.
This is a chance for us to say, can it? We don't want it. We can certainly do that.
And that's what I'm talking about right now.
We can do that. We can say storage only, store, like she said, store your RV. When you go to rentals and you go to repairs, you're going to have repair facilities. You're going to have to wash it, clean it out, get it ready for the next time, do an inspection, almost like a service station.
Exactly.
Well, all I'm saying is we can recommend, which I would highly do, this is not P, this is C, it's got to come back here. It's got to come back here for you people to come here and not be administrative. And if that's the message between us and that, they'll respond to that. All we're trying to do is gather information, not say you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. It's not what we're trying to do here.
No, I'm just trying to figure out why we're doing this, John. That's all I'm doing.
I'm spending that for a unit out there. If you go up to Rocky Top and you go across the hill, all those are full. They have no storage. They're building more of them there. Is there a need for that? I think there is. But that's what the developer takes the risk of finding that out. Right. They put $500,000, $1 million in the facility and nobody rents it.
And it doesn't appear to be economically viable if we don't have lots that are 5 to 8 acres.
5 to 8 acres.
I mean, we just don't. Doesn't seem like we have the space within our zoned commercial areas to accommodate something that would be economically viable for a developer.
The other question that I have too is, the last session we voted unanimously against rezoning across the street, basically, from this section. Because of the beauty of Woodland Park, you're driving into Woodland Park and you wanted to leave everything as is. How come we're going right across the street and changing it so that we're going to have RV storage?
We are not dealing with any land use application with
But
this
we're
discussion.
changing the zoning
We're
to
not
allow
changing
it.
any zoning.
That's
We're
what-
changing the text of the zoning to apply citywide.
Okay, but I don't understand if this is the gateway into Woodland Park, when on the right-hand side as you're coming in, the city staff's recommendation was to keep it the way that it currently was zoned. Excuse me. And then across the street, do you guys want to add in all of the language changes to change the beauty of entering into Woodland Park? And I just don't understand the logic.
I don't think we're trying to do that.
We're not.
My input would be simple. My input would be simple based upon what probably the best expert in the room talked about. Well, our choices are either, if we were to consider anything, and I'll grant you that there's a need. None of us, I don't want to debate that. It's either open or it's going to be fully covered. You said that up in Colorado, the canopy structure, kind of partially covered, is probably not going to work very well because of winds and snow and wear and tear. I struggle a little bit sort of figuring out how an open space could be hidden from public view. So actually I'm opposed to allowing, if we were to even consider allowing this, I just don't see how any of the areas that you identified could be allow for open storage and have that openness be hidden from public view. It just, let me finish, please. So I don't know if I'm supportive of this yet, but some of the areas you identify, if you could have a very high-end covered facility that would be continuous with other covered buildings in the area, that may make some sense to me, but I do worry about this whole issue of visual environmental impact. We already have it in spots and with some of our, I have to be careful, some of our other entry visions as we come into the city, but I don't want to add to it. And I don't see how you cover something and hide it when you're coming in from a high point. You're going to see the thing.
So, Commissioner Scanlon, would you be okay with the text amendment if it was all enclosed?
It would be something that I would be. It would be something that I think is worth looking at than what that would look like. I mean, if it looked like a building that was shown in your presentation, that's a very nice building, in my humble opinion. You would never know it's an RV storage. It could be a small big box shopping store. But I'm not really persuaded that allowing some of these lots to just store things openly and put up big fences and, we're not going to build an Astrodome or something around it, or half of a bubble. I haven't been persuaded of that yet.
Okay, so we're
not taking a vote tonight, so I'm just giving you a sense of where I am.
Right, so the direction I'm getting from you is change it to enclosed and change it to conditional use where it comes before you.
I'm very supportive of the conditional use only and not making it a permitted use.
Okay, and then the enclosed storage would give you the ability as a conditional use to talk about the architecture of the site, the design, the landscaping, all of the things that you would normally see with a conditional use.
Now, maybe such conditions as this wouldn't be supported by the other commissioners. That's fine. And there's still a lot of discussion to be had. And maybe ultimately having such a narrow set of use, a narrow use and a narrow condition would not be economically viable to a potential developer. But that's sort of not our problem. Our problem is deciding what is in the best interest of the community, given balancing all the issues. And one of the major issues I think I've heard, and I feel personally, but I've heard from the two conversations we've had on this, is the whole thing around visual impact.
Okay.
A comment about the concern about existing eyesores in town. Most of those eyesores are non-conforming uses. So I just want to make that clear that those were pre-existing uses prior to zoning. So they are grandfathered, so to speak. They can continue to exist. They are not uses that we endorsed or sanctioned through the city, through the zoning regulations. They are non-conforming uses, or uses outside the city. Some people don't realize that there are pockets of county property in the city that we have no control over, and so those uses are outside our jurisdiction.
I've got a question. How are you going to block this off when last November there was the city ordinance saying that no fences in the front, can't be higher than 6 foot tall?
How would this type of facility be screened? There's many options. First of all, enclosure is a way to screen it. So if we do require that these be fully enclosed, the building would screen the RVs. There's landscaping. You can berm something and then plant it with heavy vegetation to screen it. You could do fencing and landscaping combined. You could do siting in terms of the specifics and unique characteristics of the lot. So there's numerous options.
Vicki, the answer is they can't, because there's not a fence high enough, because that ground sits so much lower. So the answer to that is screening it with good quality, good looking buildings. Putting something out there that doesn't look like a Butler building, 300 feet long and 100 feet wide, made out of galvanized steel. It means putting something that architecturally, and they have the ability to do that at that place through our design standards. And that's another meeting for you to come back for. Okay, as long as we have this conditional, because that's how you screen that. You make it look attractive. Just, would you put a mobile home out there and then put a 20-foot fence around it, or would you put a $750,000 house and put in a nice front yard, which looks better? And that's what has to be done here, because there's no way to screen it. It's too far down below the highway there.
Well, everybody's talking about a single property. What properties are candidates for?
So we're looking at only the service commercial zone district, which is, let me go to that particular slide. So this is service commercial. You see purple properties. So there are 7 lots that are zoned service commercial. There are these lots here, which are the old sewage lagoons. This lot here, which is by Tractor Supply. And these lots here, which is by the bus barn, school bus barn.
How many of those are 5 to 8 acres or larger, which our guest expert suggested is the minimum size to be economically viable?
So
the reason we asked to, even before you answer the question, if it gets down to it's 0, there's no point to this. If it's only 1, then we are talking perhaps potentially, in practice about 1 lot, though we state generally, and we should be aware of that and be cautious.
Right. So again, it's a tract of land currently unplatted here that is potentially 15 acres in size,
right,
or more. Yeah, it's more than 15 acres. These tracts here, these lots, are approximately 1 to 2 acres in size. So these are smaller lots, and these lots here are about the same size, maybe 2 to 5 acres in size up here.
See, and it's those little lots up there that concern me with the outside uncovered use. They're not that far from neighborhoods. I remember in the last conversation on this, somebody may not be living adjacent to it, but people live pretty close, whatever in the world that means. But, the big hunk, in my opinion, the last thing I would want to look at living here, and that does matter, would be driving into Woodland Park all the time looking at a parking lot of RVs right next to a decrepit permanent RV establishment. It's kind of like so we got $500,000 ones next to $5,000 ones, and boy, that looks like a great place to live. That just doesn't make it for me. Covered, sophisticated, nice structure, whatever we think of Walmart. A lot of visitors that come and see us say, boy, that's a handsome Walmart. You never hear those two words kind of come together. And but they say the town obviously gave a lot of thought and put a lot of pressure on the company to put a building up that for a Walmart does a pretty nice job at blending in, sort of. Same kind of idea, in my opinion, on anything running into that big lot.
The most expensive Walmart west of the Mississippi, built when it was built because of all the design standards that the city made them comply to. I was on council then. That's what took place there.
To finish up with Commissioner Brown's question, this is the heavy service commercial light industrial zone. There are 13 lots. These ones are much smaller lots, less than 1 acre in size. So,
I've got a question.
Yes, he had one back up there, but let's give them a chance to.
Please. Who's got the mic?
Hold on, he's trying to make the mic not make noise.
Hi, my name's John Knopfsinger. My wife and I recently moved up here about a year ago, and we're real grateful to be here in this community, and we like it. But I guess I know things get developed, and they have to be developed. I come from a background with that, with the city of Denver for 33 years. I paid all the bills at the airport from the day it had a shovel put in the dirt. But I do have some concerns here, and they are aesthetic concerns that I have for this community. This community has a great aesthetic look when you drive into it and when you drive out of it. But I'm a little concerned right now about the fact that I hear that there's been a lot of demand for storage. I have RVs. I found storage easily enough after calling around for about 3 hours. I don't think there's that great of a storage need here for that stuff, and that's all well and good. But my other concern is here, I think it's more developers pushing this change than it is the community need that's pushing this change. And I think if you put this to a vote to have this ordinance changed to the people in this community, I think you would get it voted down pretty quickly. But that being said, we should always be looking to bring revenue into the city and have this be a viable community. And when you have RV storage and you put out language that's very vague or very open, I should say, who knows what we're going to get? You know, maybe these developers want to do something out here, but we don't know what their plans are. We don't know what that's going to look like. We know our city can make it look like something due to certain standards, but with the vague language we have here to change this, there's no guarantee of that. It's just not there. So I just caution everyone. I think the community is a beautiful community we have up here. I really do not see this great super need for storage up here. I found it easily enough. I did that within 3 hours. And it wasn't that I could probably store it at my house, but I don't want to do that because there is a covenants in my neighborhood, but there's plenty of people that store them in my neighborhood. I did it out of courtesy to my fellow neighbors, and I found it in about 3 hours. So I don't think there's a need that isn't getting fulfilled up here. That's being done in just outside the city in the county limits just fine out here. And it disturbs me that I keep hearing this language of this great need. I don't see it, and as far as I'm concerned, just looking at it from my own personal view, it doesn't exist. You can find storage for your RVs here. So if people need to find it, they can. It's just not that I don't know that we need storage like that in the city here. I don't know that that's serving our community in the best way that we can serve it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions or recommendations? Or
I have additional questions.
You got your hand up slower. It's easier for you.
I'm very quick to the draw.
Okay.
So last time we all gathered together.
Your name, we didn't.
I'm sorry, I'm Greg Kovac, and I live at 1060 Sun Valley.
Great.
So the last time we gathered, I asked a very specific question about was there an applicant? And at that time, these folks here didn't know there was an applicant. You guys did. And at that time, maybe the formal application was not submitted. And I guess my question is, has there been a change in that formal submission so that are we talking about a very specific piece of property here, the one across or near the Walmart and the mobile home park?
There has been a specific application submitted, and it is scheduled to be heard at the next Planning Commission meeting. We have sent out notifications to adjacent property owners, and the agenda is scheduled to be posted in the newspaper, and the site's been posted with posters. And anyone can come to my office and look at the application.
And it is for specifically mini storage units. It does not have outside storage of RVs. So it is for mini storage units.
We're doing this because we continue to get inquiries and phone calls from both developers and residents of the city who have these types of questions.
Well, we have we have many subdivisions that don't allow RVs in the yards. So, no.
Take it back to him.
And then we have older subdivisions in town that do not have covenants, and so people do store their RVs in their yards. And there are lots of people. How many people here have an RV? How many of you do have RVs? Okay, so we have 4 or 5 among this group. And you don't have a need. Okay, and so that is the decision. The Planning Commission can decide that this is something that the community does not need or does not want, and we don't need to do the text amendment. It's only because we have had inquiries and that there are neighborhoods that do not allow for RVs to be in their yards. Many of the newer neighborhoods. Now, whether those covenants are enforced or not is not the city's issue, but
it's the HOA's issue. It's the HOA's issue.
It is the HOA's or the neighborhood issue. The neighbors can take an issue, whether you have an active HOA or not, to court. And Jerry can tell us all about that process. Jerry lives in a neighborhood that has covenants, but there is no formal active. However, they have had lawsuits in their neighborhood. So, we're just trying to throw it out there. If it doesn't stick, it doesn't need to go any further.
Fellow in the back with a ball cap, you're next.
Jeff Cahill, 187 Glendale Drive in the Sunny Glen subdivision. I was aware of a couple of things from Miss Linda. I wouldn't say it was a specious statement, but when I owned an RV and a trailer, it was our custom to take things out of storage, bring it to the house and load it. Not take our vehicle full of stuff, forget half of it, and take it to the RV, and then bemoan the fact that we were stupid. So the bottom line is that I think that is inherent to a lot of individual communities, even with HOAs, is you can bring your vehicle there overnight, park it up, and leave the next day. Or if you get home late from a camp out, you can come and you can park your vehicle overnight, and the next day go back, drop off your vehicle in your RV, pick up your vehicle, and come home. So that's not a big deal. The thing I think that's going to happen in my, I can't say I have clairvoyancy, but if you build a facility in this neck of the woods and denude our beautiful landscape and make it a commercial site like you have on Highway 24 going out to Colorado Springs out to Mark Shelfel Road, you're going to wind up having that in perpetuity. And the people who come up here and go on camping trips are going to find it very advantageous to park their vehicle at the site, pick up their RV, go camp, come back, drop off their RV up here, and not make a mess of the Colorado Springs area any further. And then we're going to have this, as they say, build it and they will come. And so if you do it, that's going to fill it up. So the bottom line is we may not have enough vehicles here now, but we're inviting the scourge, if you will, of out-of-town parkers to come up here and leave their stuff for the week or the 2 weeks or the 5 months period. So that's my observation.
Probably. Right.
That woman all the way in the blue eventually, she's had her hand up for a while.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Patricia Stinner, 1140 Michael Lane. Laura, you had distributed a chart of permitted uses. Could you put that up on the slide for me, please? I'm actually an advocate for changing this this language, and I can explain to you why.
Is this the chart, Patricia?
Yes, thank you. You have all the different zones, and you're saying this is only going to pertain to the SC, service commercial, and the other light industrial zoning, and possibly the CBD, I think. I mean, you can correct me.
PUD.
PUD, thank you. I live in an SR zone.
Yes.
I'm one of the old neighborhoods that Sally says doesn't have covenants, and we don't. We don't have an active HOA, but we do have people that park industrial trailers, campers, industrial use and commercial vehicles on their yard, and yet that's not permitted. 2 or more campers, for example, constitutes a campground. We have a couple of those, and I'm hoping that if we put through some of this, it will trickle down to affect our neighborhood, and this would give an opportunity to people in our neighborhood to find elsewhere to store their commercial vehicles. So I'm actually an advocate. I also see a benefit to something that Mr. DeVoe said at the last meeting, was that it would be hard not to improve upon that vacant lagoon site. I'm not as familiar with the site, but I think I know which one you're talking about.
2 sewage ponds.
I might have to agree with him, and we could create, an income-generating opportunity there. Now, I'm also someone that used to live in marinas. I used to live on a sailboat, and my sailboat looked at Beyonce's mansion. Better put, she looked at my sailboat, and it improved her property value. So as far as property values, it's difficult in a recreational community to make those correlations. And I do have some professional background. I can make that statement. I just have to be very careful about what I say about values. So I'm not against this ordinance. I do agree, though, in my opinion, based on the last several rezoning cases that have come up and requests for changes in uses, I question, why do we spend all this time? Have the developer bring you a site plan. If you don't request a site plan, why are we wasting all these people's time and your salary that I pay when this has much to do about nothing other than maybe Tricia Stinner gets a few campgrounds out of her neighborhood, but we didn't have to go here. Have your applicants bring a site plan at the onset, and then we're not dealing with speculators either. So it's just a recommendation, just feedback for you. So thank you.
Now, wait a second. In the blues first. Okay. Can't do that, Arnie. You gotta give her a chance. Okay. Okay. I understand.
Judy Malich, 300 Morning Sun Drive. My comment is, hope I haven't waited so long that I have a senior moment here. Our neighborhood does have CC&Rs, and one of it is that you can't have your RV on your property if it is not enclosed. Now, we have a neighbor across the street. He has a large travel trailer. He has it right next to his storage facility at the back of his behind his house, and he built a very nice wooden fence around it. It's not the least bit detracting from the neighborhood. It's not detracting from our property values or anything else. But our CC&Rs do say you can't have a travel trailer without having it enclosed. And enclosed is sufficient to have a nice non-permeable fence around it. Not a chain link fence, but a nice wooden cedar fence. Problem solved. He has his trailer there. He can load it when he wants to go someplace, and it's not an eyesore to the neighborhood. It did not take 6 hours of the Planning Commission's time and people's time to discuss building SUV storage units. It was a simple, logical thing to do. And I think we need to consider that, and there's ways around having storage units, and I don't want this city known for having storage units for RVs and having everybody in creation from Colorado Springs bringing their RVs up here because it's closer to the doggone mountains where they're going anywhere. Because that, and then we have the traffic more. Let's use our heads. I agree with Mr. Scanlon, too. If we do have any RV parking, it better be fully enclosed, because anything else would be totally unacceptable.
Okay. Now, I get to talk a little bit now first. You're next. Okay. It's an issue of property rights. People that buy a piece of property have got the right, as long as it complies with code. You may not need it. You may not. It's on. You may not need it. You may not need. I have a 35-foot pull behind. That's just an accident waiting to happen anyway. Unless you got a, anti-sway hitch on it. But anyway, what I'm saying is there is a need for people in this community that have units that would use that facility. They're not people. The applicant that she has is not going to spend millions of dollars based on a whim and a prayer that this is going to work. There's studies that have to been done on that. Well, and part of the problem is hail. Now, you can build a pretty fence around it, but figure out what it costs to put a new roof on a $500,000 motorhome. Okay? So there are needs for people to do that, for that kind of stuff. So that's another issue down the road to talk about. I believe that the applicant, the only thing, the alleged applicant, we have one now, wanted to do was increase the size of the storage from 300 square feet above that. Well, I can see that, because that's only a 10 by 30 area. And a question for you. Many of the really nice luxury storage units, 14 foot wide by 40, is not big enough. They want a restroom in them. They want heat. They want to put their expensive luxury car next to it. That's not big enough.
That's a different model.
It's a different model.
That's a different business model. That's RV condos.
Okay.
Where in essence you're basically buying the garage.
Okay.
They have some of those in Denver. We actually looked at that business model. We decided it just didn't make sense for us. And what we did find when we talked to a lot of the condo owner businesses was it's kind of a cool concept. You think that everybody's going to get together on a Saturday and hang out and grill and talk about their cars. And I mean, we did see one of those where the gentleman had 13, I think the cheapest car he had parked in there was $300,000, and he had 13 of those cars. And but the whole facility was empty. And going back to your point is people aren't just coming. Most of the people, our clients, are not coming in every weekend. They're very serious about traveling all over the country, so they just want to come and go. But most of them, you might want to use a restroom because you're getting ready to go on the road for 3 hours, but it's not that necessary. Even our facility, 100,000 square foot facility, we have one bathroom, and that's all we need.
But some of those people go out and work on them, they polish them,
Not really. No, not really. I mean, they might, but there's no electricity either. Now, in the condo, that would be a different situation.
Correct.
But that business model would just never work up here, period. There's not enough.
Okay.
And like you said, the only way this would get built is if there was a need. And for our facility, we spent $7,000 defining that there was going to be a need. So even if you approved a lot up here, it's never going to get built unless there's enough people that would use it. So that concern is there a need? The market would tell you if there's a need or not. And if there's not a need, it would never happen.
Would you give the microphone to that gentleman? Oh, he's got one. We got two now. Oh, okay, that's the extra one.
This is Mike Nakai again.
Can't hear you.
This is Mike Nakai again, 225 Morningstar Court. Can I get the PowerPoint that I gave you guys?
Well, Mike, we didn't know you were going to do this, so it's going to take us about...
Okay. Or does someone else want to go then?
Somebody else?
I think something I've got old-fashioned photographs of once again, my name's Arnie Sparnans at 2621 Vista Glen Court. And in the spirit of this being a workshop and staring at the proposed changes, I do want to commend the city. One, thank you for the records request fulfillment. That was very useful information there, and also insight to listening to some of the things. I just kind of think of what is Woodland Park when you drive up to it. What services do you have here? I just want to give So coming up the pass, the first place we go by, is Rocky Top Campground, which is a number of RVs parked out to the highway. It's clearly a place people can use for RV storage, but not a look that we want here, in the...
Be careful now, mine's out there.
I'll show you where mine's at.
Okay.
It's even worse, okay? And then after we pass there, we come up on Leggett's RV storage, and you've got the chain link fence with the barbed wire, and a couple small trees, but you've got a lot of open storage of RVs coming out to the highway. And here we go. Well, hopefully we're going to a nicer place than this as we get up to Woodland Park. Before you get there, we go by Big Pines RV Park, and this is where I paid to store my camping trailer when I had it. And it's a combination of storage units, a bunch of parks, and it clearly represents, you can see RV storage there kind of mixed in with container storage, and clearly something that we don't want here. And finally, right before you cross the line into Woodland Park,
This is my front yard.
You have last chance for storage at Ute Pass. You store it, and I'm not going to even ask what's in there, and so that represents. I mean, clearly, as we heard, RVs and camping trailers. I think we need to include the two together. Are very large, and they have very aesthetic things, and there's a reason why typically homeowners associations prohibit them and look at them. I think the opportunity we have in this code change here on the permitted uses table is that I think it was excellent partitioning of identifying service commercial and heavy commercial areas for that, and not doing it even as a conditional use in, like, say, community commercial. And so I think it's the right partitioning that we need. There's a few areas in the town. I think people brought up the point, rental and storage. It actually should be sales, rental, and storage, because what we have now, once you actually do get into Woodland Park, we have automobile sales that come out to the right-of-way, and we understand why they're there. But if the next step was to say those are replaced by large RVs or camping trailers, then you have the same look coming into the town, as storage units, because they could easily be rental, they could be sales, or they could be storage. And that's the gateway into the city that we're trying to keep nice. 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago? End of 2014, the Planning Commission passed and recommended an ordinance change that eliminated the 25-foot setback from the right-of-way. So there's no setback requirements to the right-of-way. And my proposal is keep the language that you've got, add a separate section that pulls out specifically the large box camping trailers and recreational vehicles, and put the sales of those vehicles where we currently don't have a problem, we don't have any use, and we don't have any pending projects, and take the opportunity to clean up our ordinance and segregate out so we don't make that a problem. Because the risk we run otherwise, here's a picture of once we come into what we want to make our beautiful downtown, first thing you see is vehicle sales parked on the sidewalk, right up to the right-of-way. Bad enough that they're ATVs or motorcycles, but if you imagine those were camping trailers, RVs, blocking your view to get in or out, and plus the visual look that it would create for Woodland Park.
Probably Big D or the other guy.
Big D.
Catamount.
And then once you're right in the core of downtown too, you do have another facility out there where you've got ATV sales on the sidewalk and up to the sidewalk. And so, my suggestion to the Planning Commission and to the city in working the ordinance is to separate out, since there currently isn't a problem, separate out the sales, rental, and storage of RVs and camping trailers in those zones only that you've proposed. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernie.
Now, in the very first picture, if he goes around, you see a blue and white Holiday Rambler. That's mine, and it looks nice. Okay.
What do you do about hail?
Yeah, you don't. You just punt.
I guess if I had an input, Laurie, is I think all we're talking about here is storage of RVs.
Right.
All right. So I think we need to narrow down what we're going to do.
Okay.
And I would be entirely comfortable if we had something that described, that picture of the enclosed RVs, facility. If it looked like that, I don't see any problem with it.
Right.
So that's, that would be, that way we cover your concerns about storage. Applicants come in and say, well, if you want to build it, you got to look like this, and then we've taken care of that. Rentals and sales and all that kind of stuff. We're not talking about that. We're talking about storage. And I think if we narrow that down to specifically that, why we'd have something we could work with.
And Commissioner Watson, just to further that direction or that directive, would you want to take out automobiles, trailers, light trucks, motorcycles, ATVs, OTVs,
You betcha.
snowmobiles? So just RVs and boats?
Yep, RVs and boats.
Camping trailers and RV.
Can I ask a question? Well, first off, if we talk about RVs, we should be clear. RVs is a term that is a defined term, and it was not proposed to be touched. RV has to do only with a motorized vehicle, so very large camp trailers are then excluded. And I would think they're the same considerations, large trailers otherwise. So, and if we're going to touch that, we need to be careful because RV park adopts that definition and is used in another section of the use table.
City definition doesn't self-develop, so it doesn't include.
But now there's another issue when you have boats are brought up too. Boats are bringing up a whole nother. I mean, if people think they have the same if large boats have the same consideration, obviously it can be addressed. It's not currently addressed as far as I know, which means the residential keeping of boats is not restricted because it's not addressed anywhere in the ordinance. It's reverse addressed for the RVs because RVs are part of recreational vehicle parks, and recreational vehicle parks are specifically addressed in the use table. So we're going to get into boats. Let's be very careful because it's not just how are they going to get stored. We're going to create. We now got somebody who's got a boat and an RV in their house in the yard, who is not prohibited. Is now prohibited unless we add an express inclusion that you can have a boat as well as an RV in the yard. I mean, let's just be really careful as we start adding to these definitions.
The difference between an RV park is not storage. We're talking storage, not an RV park.
Well,
where they can occupy them.
Yeah. Well, that's
huge difference.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a problem for the RV park because an RV park is simply where there are 2 or more RVs.
That's in a proposed thing that they haven't done yet.
No, that's the current definition.
Well, we all laughed about that last week.
Okay, well, yes. Let me.
Just make the whole town.
So I think we just be clear. But if we mean to do anything with language touching RVs, let's understand. We want to add trailers to it. We want to add boats to it. Trailers. And if we do that, make certain we consider the consequences for the single family.
Oh yeah.
So can I ask Commissioner Brown, what is your opinion? What should we do? Should we include boats or not include boats?
All right. Well, first, just the general count first off. Whether a combination of need and the difficulty of designing an outdoor storage area, whether enclosed or not, I'm not going to support that, whether it's conditional or not conditional. I think everyone's pretty much already said conditional would have to be it. Right. And I think to the extent people commented, there seemed to be support for the idea that it would be in an appropriate storage warehouse. That means there is a current provision for mini storage warehouses, which needs some thought. Is a mini storage warehouse different than a large storage warehouse? I think considerations that went into that are different. A large one that has RVs will have a different scale, a different scope, different usage perhaps than the one there's smaller ones where you put your furniture in is different where you put your RVs in and how it's used there. Conceptually, several of the gentlemen here mentioned it. Peter for sure said that he would at least consider that in a building, as I would too. But if it's in a building, I'm not sure we have to be so specific on the definition. If we simply didn't talk about RVs, didn't talk about boats, didn't talk about camp trailers, if you choose to create a new or changed storage or self-store area that had larger areas than the 300 square feet now, people could put their boat in it, they could put their RV in it, or they could just put the regular stuff they have now in it, and they would decide. And that's an approach which, at least I think conceptually, I mean, you need to think about it in the light of day. Does that work to not tinker with these definitions which have the unanticipated consequences on residential and other matters?
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I think those are great points. And as part of this review of recreation vehicles, we did propose an amendment to eliminate the 300 square foot maximum for mini storage warehouse, because that mini storage warehouse allows for personal property, storage of personal property. An RV is personal property. But the 300 square foot maximum would prohibit an RV from being stored.
Yeah, and I would say as part of that, if the decision was there's an existing provision for the mini storage warehouse with certain conditions attached to it, one would want to go back and look at each of those conditions and how those should be evaluated, how we assess those in the light of a structure which had much larger units in it and truck going in. There may be some differences in large units than there are in small. And I haven't, frankly, really studied to reach a conclusion on that, but it may not necessarily just be enlarging the amount in order to address it adequately. I think people in the Commission would be interested to hear what those issues were.
Right, and we haven't actually got to that row of the matrix yet. We're still in the very first row. So, very good points.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Are you getting enough input that you can go on at this point?
I am. Let's continue with questions and make sure we've addressed.
Do we have any other questions up here?
Mr. Brown, boats that are on the water usually have a trailer. So if we're regulating trailers, how are we therefore regulating boats? Boat off a trailer?
Put it on a dolly?
Yeah, no. You're not going to take a boat off a trailer.
No.
And they're one and the same.
It's got to get water.
Any other questions?
Do you have enough input at this point to go to the next meeting?
No,
If you don't, then proceed on.
We want to hear Mike's presentation.
We haven't forgot you. Okay.
Okay, again, Mike Nakai, 225 Morningstar Court. I'm encouraged by the questions you guys are asking, whether we need this at all, whether we want it indoors, whether we restrict what kind of items we put in there. Just think, though, remember, what you do here today still may become a matter of enforcement down the road. Okay? So let me, it's hard to probably follow some of those actual pictures, but some of these are all local in Colorado. They're not just in this town. All right, so someone mentioned boats and maybe without trailers. This is in Sedalia up the highway. This is also in Sedalia. They attempted to put up a fence and screening, but you can see how effective it is, and it's only a few feet below road surface. Again, in Colorado Springs on Templeton Gap, they put up a pretty good-sized fence with good screening. It's a nice lot, but you know, even with a few feet below the road, it's not effective. This is on Nevada. So now we've got storage of rusty vehicles, and here's a boat with a torn tarp, because you want to protect the boat from the rain and the snow and stuff getting in. So the tarps, as I mentioned before, get weathered and eventually tear. Also in Colorado Springs, a little bit farther south in Nevada, is a kind of a creative trailer and vehicles. There's actually about 4 Cadillacs in this lot. This one with flat tires. Monument. Some of these pictures you can tell, like this one's done with Google Earth, so I didn't drive around to all these places. We've got trucking tractor trailers being stored in an RV lot in Monument. Right off of I-25, you folks can look at this every time you come and go to Denver. A large RV storage lot, which not only has construction equipment,
Let me ask you a question. You got some pictures of how it's done right?
What's that?
Do you have some pictures of how it should look?
Yeah, the ones back here that...
I mean, a good one that you would like to see done up here.
Yeah, this one is, you know, I think some of these, the contents are done, you know, they've maintained what the content is inside.
Does Sedalia have design standards?
They're a victim of the landscaping, just like the SC lot is that we've talked about. Okay, they've done their best, and all of their intentions are here, but sometimes there's only so much they can do. This is another pretty nice lot in Castle Rock, with the exception of the storage container, the shipping container. Lake George, there's farm equipment and trailers. They're nice farm equipment in with the RVs. It's nice stuff, but there's no blankets we've already seen, so I'll skip that.
But you're doing this for effect, and it's not. I don't think impressive to anybody.
She had a similar thing in her presentation as well. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder, John. Right. So my point is, and the reason I asked about whether the stuff was in the city limits or not, is just say no. You don't have to do anything here. Okay. It goes to Vicky's point on why are we even here? Why do we need to change this?
We're not voting on anything tonight.
I know.
Okay.
And I'm trying to give you an alternate perspective here, okay? If you go to Breckenridge, there's currently no RV storage within the city limits of Breckenridge, okay?
We're not Breckenridge. That's the last town I live in.
Chris Kulik, who's the planner in Breckenridge, there's no RV storage in Breckenridge. But look, what I've done is I've marked the X's just outside the city limits where it is. Same thing for Aspen. The planning director, Jennifer Phelan, RV storage is not allowed inside the city limits of Aspen, but they put it just outside. Okay, the market takes care of the need in these communities just outside the city limits. Golden. Okay, so that's all I had for just to give you another perspective that you don't have to solve this. Okay, this can be done just outside the city limits as it's being done right now. Thank you.
You were on.
And like I say, I don't have a dog in this hunt because we don't have anything planned up here. I did have a thought after. Do you have the mouse? Yeah, let me borrow that. I just wanted to bring up that other. Okay, is mine still on there? I can pull up the PowerPoint I did.
Yep.
Is that it?
No, that one's mine.
That's Laura's.
I don't think you want to see mine again.
Yeah, I got it down here.
You see it?
Let me pull this up because I had a thought for you guys to consider. And like I say, I don't have a dog in this hunt. I want to go back to this picture. This guy.
Okay,
then how do I?
On the little right there.
This guy?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Something to consider if you do. I would also agree with you. Enclosed is better. However, if you have just enclosed, it's a huge building. I mean, you might even consider, if you were considering something, you might consider using some enclosed, but use those physical buildings to screen the rest. And you would have to look at the land. You would probably have to do a conditional where you would look at the landscaping and say, okay, realistic, like you showed, it looks stupid to have a fence, but you're above it and you're looking in. It just looks dumb. But if you had a well-designed facility, you might have one row of enclosed, but that acts as a screen just because of the landscaping, and then you could have some parking behind it. Because, not everybody wants to spend $300 to $400 to park their vehicle, but they also don't want to be 45 minutes away from their vehicle. So, you can design things where you could have some outside, but it would have to be very strict. So it's just a thought. And developers are getting a lot more sophisticated with storage, where they do care how it looks. And there's a lot of really cool storage facilities coming on the market now.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's been said a couple times, basically, property owners have rights.
Yep.
Well, right now, whoever owns that or whatever, or it's in the sale, I have no idea what's going on with it, but they have it. They know what they can and cannot do with it. Why do they have more rights? I mean, they have no more rights than the next person.
I don't understand.
A question of
statement
expansion of the elements of owner of the right of beneficial uses is an increase in rights. It's not a change. It's not a reduction. Is that the idea?
Yeah, basically, we're giving them something. You know, they have property rights. Well, we're giving it so they can have more rights. I don't understand. Everybody's got property rights.
Nobody's given anybody anything. We're
But
simply
if we change
talking
it,
about this.
you're giving them
And everybody
something.
has rights based on the zoning classification of the area they live in. Your property rights in your home is different than the property rights at your business. It's just different because of the zoning. And that's why we have zoning for that.
But if we change the format up here and say, then we give them more rights.
I'm not proposing to do that.
All I'm just saying is that property owners, you know what your rights are in the given zones that you have, whether you're PUD or ag or whatever, you know what you can do. And everybody's got property rights.
What our purpose of this proposal is that right now in the matrix there is an allowance for those very large buildings for businesses, for professional storage, but there is no allowance for large buildings for personal storage, such as recreation.
6 people that called in.
Such as recreation vehicles. So that's all we're saying, is that there is a gap between if you run a business and you're doing a storage business, professional storage, there is allowance to be able to have very large buildings. But if you are to propose personal storage within a large building, it's non-existent. We have mini storage, which allows for personal storage up to 300 square feet, a 10 by 30 square foot compartment. So that's the gap that we have. And if the Planning Commission feels that enclosed compartments for personal storage that are larger than 300 square feet are appropriate, we can make a separate category that would address large buildings' personal storage.
Enclosed on 4 sides.
Enclosed on all 4 sides, and treat it just like we do with if you had a business that had professional storage. So that's where
And
the gap
that's
is.
frankly, but I'm only one. That's where I feel like, it should head. But anyway, go ahead.
So we would like to know, is that
They need
where
direction.
the rest of you would like to head? I think there was a question
I
from
have one more question about the mini storage warehouses. It looks like they are permitted in heavy service, commercial, light industrial, so that would mean we would have no say on architectural, artistic design or anything like that. They're just permitted. Or do you have some say on that?
The staff will review it
That would be
according to our
another. That would be another reason to have a separate category, perhaps for larger.
Exactly.
storage. That would be an
Exactly.
example.
We could keep the mini storage just as it is, and then add a new category for large personal storage.
I would agree with the staff that having a 300 square foot limit on available space doesn't make any sense. How many units in a single building? Put 20 units in there, you've got 6,000 square feet.
Right.
We care if it's 10 by 10 square foot, 14 by 40. The exterior look is going to be virtually the same. Right. Yeah. So to accommodate reasonable storage in RVs, I don't see. I agree that that restriction of 300 square feet should be eliminated. We have fire codes, building codes to address the safety issues and storage ratings for those buildings. So 300 doesn't make sense.
If you came at this from the perspective of never mentioning RVs and simply said, we feel there's a demand for larger personal storage spaces that are totally enclosed, we would have been the discussion would have been very different. But somehow the RV, the open storage, the ricky-racky kind of stuff that's around appropriately provokes, I think, in most of us, a sense that it doesn't work. But if it was simply a larger square foot unit storage space, as Ken articulated, so what?
So what I'm understanding is perhaps we might be able to achieve consensus if we don't even propose row number 11, take that out, but go ahead and take out the 300 square foot maximum on mini storage.
I'd have to think about that.
So we're not addressing RVs then?
No, RVs would be considered personal property that you would then store in your mini storage warehouse that has no size limitation. Totally enclosed, it's one of the conditions of mini storage warehouse. And then all the other conditions would apply too.
And we'll get rid of all the stuff that's red.
We could get rid of row number 11 altogether.
Right.
And then look at mini storage warehouse as a conditional use in the CC, Community Commercial Zone District. It's a conditional use in the Service Commercial Zone District. So those would come before you in a planning in a public hearing. And it's outright permitted in the industrial zone, which we saw on the map is only 13 properties, which are fairly small and may not be viable for this type of use. But it depends on the market and the developer's proposal. They could be proposing a small unit.
And we've changed 11 to conditional instead of permitted, correct?
Well, I think what I was hearing this last round of discussions was, do we even need row 11 if we're going to take out the 300 square foot maximum?
Well, we just still have a service commercial zone, don't we?
It won't change the service commercial zone, but we could change the permitted use in mini storage to a conditional use if that.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
All right. So I think I have some good direction based on the discussion from the planning commissioners and from the public, and it's greatly appreciated. I will take this discussion and in about 4 weeks I will come back to you with the ordinance, and at that time you can decide whether it needs to be tweaked.
Are we going to have another work session or not?
Do you believe another work? I think I have
asking.
enough direction to bring forward an ordinance for public hearing.
You know, I think I would like to have another workshop because, you know, with everything that was in here, another workshop would be justified because we found some pitfalls. And I think we need to be very careful when things are perceived.
Your schedule.
Worded.
Is there anything else on the schedule that we can?
It kind of eliminates a lot of the discussion we had.
Right. Is there something else on the schedule in the next month?
That they're adding.
She had
They're
schedule up
adding
on the board.
recreational vehicles.
No, I mean something else that we can do with the workshops.
They're still adding all this stuff.
Hold on a second.
Well, your next meeting, we have a conditional use site plan review that we need to focus that whole meeting on. But the meeting, we could do June 14th as a work session.
Just move all the dates down a week, whatever you need.
These dates were all tentative anyway.
Would you prefer that? Let's look at it again. Because, you know, I think the other option Laura's presenting, that we just eliminate the 300 square foot, but there may be some value in creating a new line that speaks specifically to large personal storage uses.
We identified one possible one too, is rather than in the HSCLI making a large, just granting as a matter of right, a larger size, it might be one, the larger structure be one should have a different kind of review, so it should be conditional.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's another
Concerned
workshop.
with the appearance of the city, how it looks. How does the sale of RVs differ from the storage?
Very lenient. The sale of RVs is dealt with in F2. So F2 is the section that says RVs can be sold.
I understand the technical differences on the basis, but I'm thinking about the conceptual appearance of the city. A lot of people are concerned with what it looks like. So instead of putting a storage facility in one of these available lots, they decided they want to sell. Maybe they have some maintenance buildings and things, but you're going to see a whole string of RVs parked right along the highway. Would you not?
If you want Campers World up here, yes.
So if we're talking about screening storage facilities, should we be screening sales facilities?
Well, a sales wants as much visibility as possible. So screening would be contrary to the marketing of that type of use.
But again,
So
we're discussing the appearance and perception of the city. What's the difference?
At our next June 14th session will be a work session. And the 19th, instead of council reading, will be the public hearing on that. And then the next two in August will be the council. That's the way I'm hearing that?
So
we
the
have
planning
some
commission,
kind of a plan on this.
we could take this forward for a work session on June 14th for the planning commission consideration. And then it would have to come in front of the planning commission again as an ordinance for public hearing. And that could either be June 28th or it could be July 12th. And then after that, it would go to council, which would probably be July 26th or after that.
If we did it in June, then the council would have the two sessions in July to finish it.
yeah, we don't have to rush any of
No,
this.
right.
It's really, let's take the time to think through all the ramifications and be able to propose a good text amendment if it's even necessary.
Do we have a consensus? That's a good plan.
Could we have the city attorney in on one of the workshops so that they can advise us how I mean, you can put a comma in the wrong spot for a legal document and suddenly it reads totally different than what your intents were.
The city attorney does review any draft ordinances and
they
does look
know
at the
what
language.
all of our intent is, you know.
So they're all reviewed by our city attorney?
They've already been
So
reviewed.
they're already doing that. Okay. Everybody good with that? Yep. Everybody good with that? Okay, that's the schedule. We'll reconvene June 14th, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion for adjournment? We're adjourned. We will not do this on Thursday night during football schedule.